Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. I'm really glad you could join us today. We're embarking on a journey into something that's, it's fundamental to how any organization runs. Startup, huge multinational, doesn't matter. We're plunging right into the world of training.
That's right. And for those of you navigating IGCSE business studies, this is spot on for your curriculum. We're focusing today on Chapter 20. That's part of Unit 2, People in Business. And more specifically, it's Part 2 of that unit, Recruitment and Training.
Yeah, and our aim today isn't just, defining words. We want to really unpack the different kinds of training, look at how they're used in practice, and maybe most importantly, understand the impact they have on employees, yes, but also on the businesses themselves.
Exactly. And we know a lot of you are IGCSE students. Maybe English isn't your first language.
Yep.
So we're really going to try and make everything super clear, accessible, make sure the insights are things you can actually use for your studies, and, well, beyond that too.
Definitely. And just a quick reminder as we go through all this, if you find yourself wanting more resources, extra materials to really nail this stuff, you can always head over to www.igcsc-business.weebly.com. It's a great place for supporting your learning.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. Why does training matter so much? It's not just a nice to have, is it? It's, well, fundamental. And I'd argue it matters to businesses, sure, but maybe even more personally, to you.
It's interesting how often we go through training, maybe for a part-time job or even learning a new skill, and we don't really stop to think about the impact, like learning to drive or using new software. What was that shift like, going from confusion to actually getting it?
Exactly that feeling. From hesitation to competence. That's really the core of what we're discussing. In business terms, training is basically a process that involves increasing the knowledge and skills of a worker to enable them to do their job more effectively. It's not just teaching one task, like using a machine. It's broader. It's about lifting someone's overall capability, making them more proficient, more confident in their role.
And the knock-on effects, they must be huge, right? Better trained people means more productivity.
Absolutely. Well-trained employees are just inherently more productive. They learn new skills, sure, but they also get better at the skills they already have. So they work faster, more accurately, more efficiently. And that's not just about churning out more stuff. It's about the quality of what they produce.
Right, quality is key. Better quality means happier customers, fewer mistakes to fix.
Fewer mistakes, less waste, yeah. It all feeds directly into the business's bottom line, makes it healthier, more robust.
And there's more to it than just the numbers, isn't there? What about the people side of things? Morale.
Oh, massively. That's often overlooked. Training can seriously boost morale and job satisfaction. I mean, think about being in a job where you're constantly unsure, making errors, not knowing how to get better. It's stressful, demoralizing.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
Exactly. Now, contrast that with feeling like you're learning, you're growing, you're mastering things. When a company invests in you, shows they value your potential, helps you develop,
Yeah.
well, employees tend to give back. Loyalty, dedication.
I see. So it's like if they invest in me, I'll invest my effort back in them. Sort of a mutual thing.
Precisely. It builds a stronger connection. And that directly links to reducing staff turnover. People are less likely to leave if they feel valued and invested in.
Which saves the company money on hiring new people all the time.
It does. Recruitment is expensive. Advertising, interviews, the time it takes. But it's more than just cost savings. It's about keeping knowledge in the company. When experienced, trained people leave, you lose their know-how, their client relationship, how things really get done.
That's a really good point. Institutional knowledge. You can't easily replace that.
You really can't. Training helps create sticky employees. They become these valuable knowledge hubs, a strategic asset.
So investing in people builds the company's memory, its strength. That makes sense. And that must tie into keeping up with changes, too. Adaptability, competitiveness.
Directly. The business world changes so fast, doesn't it? New tech pops up constantly, new ways of working, new rules and regulations. A workforce that isn't learning is a workforce falling behind. Training is what keeps them adaptable. It helps people get to grips with new software, AI, automation, maybe new safety rules or different ways of working after a merger.
So it keeps the business competitive.
Absolutely. Without that ongoing training, businesses risk, well, becoming outdated. Productivity drops, costs go up because of mistakes or inefficiencies. They just can't keep up with their rivals. In some industries, it's literally about survival, not just getting ahead.
Okay, wow. So training isn't just an HR function tucked away somewhere. It's core strategy.
It really is. And understanding that, beyond just the definitions is so important for you guys studying business.
Right. So we've established the why. Training is critical. Now let's get into the what, the different types. Because like you said, it's not one size fits all. Businesses use different methods for different reasons.
Exactly. We're going to unpack three main categories today. Think of them as different tools in the training toolkit. We've got induction training, on-the-job training, and off-the-job training. Each has its own main purpose.
Okay, let's start with induction training. This is the first thing new people usually experience, right? First impressions count.
They really do. Induction training is specifically given to new employees when they first start a job. The main goal, help them settle in, figure out where things are, who people are, and avoid that awful first day feeling of being totally lost and overwhelmed.
Oh, I know that feeling. A good induction can make such a difference. So what's actually in a typical induction program? What does it cover?
It's usually pretty comprehensive, or at least it should be. Based on our source material, like Figure 20.2, it covers quite a bit. It starts with introducing the actual job role, what you'll be doing, and introducing you to your immediate work colleagues, your team.
Okay, so who you work with day to day.
Yeah, it helps you integrate quickly. You'll probably also get introduced to senior staff, key managers, so you know who's who in the bigger picture. And it usually covers the company's history, its main aims, its objectives, gives you context. Why does this company exist? Where is it going?
Sort of the big picture stuff, and the practical things too, like rules.
Definitely. Crucial company policies, things like, dress code, how disciplinary stuff works, holiday booking procedures, the nuts and bolts of working there, and of course, health and safety training. That's usually right up front, non-negotiable.
Makes sense. Get that sorted from day one.
Absolutely.
Protects everyone.
And finally, usually a tour of the workplace. Where's the fire exit? Where's the break room? Where, crucially, is the coffee machine? Just helps you find your way around.
Right, reduces that initial confusion. So, okay, it makes people feel welcome, but what are the real business benefits? It must be more than just feeling good.
Oh, much more. The immediate win is reduced anxiety, better morale right from the start. Feeling comfortable and valued makes a difference. And that translates directly into faster productivity. Someone who knows the basics, knows who to ask, knows the policies, they get up to speed much quicker. Less time being confused, more time actually doing the job.
That saves time and money for sure, getting people productive faster.
Exactly. And that links to another big one, reduced staff turnover. If people feel welcomed, informed, part of the team from day one, they're less likely to think, oops, made a mistake joining here, and leave after a few weeks or months.
Which, again, saves on those recruitment costs we mentioned.
Right. Advertising, interviewing, it all adds up. Plus, it ensures everyone understands and follows company policies and safety rules immediately. Compliance.
Right.
That avoids problems down the line.
Okay, let's make this real. The source mentions Google and their Nooglers. That sounds like a pretty intense induction.
It's a fantastic example. Google's approach is really comprehensive. New recruits, Nooglers, go through a pretty full-on 2-week induction. It's not just a quick hello. It's lectures, presentations, meetings with senior people, a proper immersion.
2 weeks. So it's about embedding them in the Google culture, not just the job.
Totally. The source mentions things like get to know you, team-building exercises, so integrating socially. But also, crucially for Google, technical exercises designed to teach recruits about developing at Google. Things like code labs, Bigtable, specific tools and methods they use.
Wow, so they're learning the actual Google way of doing tech right from induction.
Pretty much. It gets them understanding the culture, the mission, the products, and the specific technical environment really quickly. The idea is they become productive, engaged, and aligned with Google's way of thinking almost immediately. It reduces that ramp-up time.
So Google sees it as a major investment in getting people integrated fast and effectively.
Definitely. They believe that this deep integration leads to better long-term performance, more loyalty, and ultimately more innovation. A well-integrated Noogler is likely to stay longer and contribute more.
Okay, that's induction training covered, getting people started right. Now, let's shift gear to the next type. On-the-job training. This feels like the most common one. Learning while you work.
It probably is the most common, yeah. On-the-job training is exactly that. Workers are trained in the workplace while they are doing their job. It's very practical, very hands-on. Learning happens right there in the actual work setting.
And there are different ways this can happen, right? It's not just one method.
Correct. Our source highlights a few main approaches. The first, and maybe the simplest, is just watching another worker, shadowing them.
Yeah, looking over someone's shoulder. I've done that.
We probably all have. A new person observes an experienced colleague doing the tasks. It can be informal or a bit more structured. The big plus is you see exactly how it's done in the real world with real situations.
But I guess the downside is you might pick up their bad habits. Or maybe they're just not very good at explaining things.
Spot on. That's a real risk learning shortcuts that aren't quite right or just inefficient ways of doing things. And yeah, the quality really depends on the person doing the showing. Are they a good teacher? Are they patient? Do they even want to teach?
Good point. Which leads us to the next approach, maybe a bit more formal, mentoring.
Yes, mentoring is more structured. A trainee gets paired with an experienced member of staff for a given period. The mentor gives direct supervision, guidance, shares their knowledge. It's usually more in-depth, more relationship-based than just shadowing.
So it's more personal, like having a dedicated guide.
Exactly. Big advantages. Personalized learning, deep understanding of the role and the company culture builds strong working relationships. Downsides. It can be very time-consuming for the mentor, taking them away from their own tasks. And it relies on a good match and the mentor being skilled at, well, mentoring.
Okay, and the third on-the-job approach mentioned is job rotation, moving people around different roles.
That's the one. Employees alternate between different jobs during the course of their employment, end quote. They might spend time in different departments or doing different tasks within a team. The big win here is broadening skills and knowledge. Creates multi-skilled, flexible workers.
That sounds really useful for the business. Flexibility is key.
It really is. They understand how different parts of the business connect. It's also great preparation for promotion, gives them that wider view. Disadvantages. It can disrupt workflow as people move around. Teams have to adjust. And maybe employees don't get enough time in one role to become a real expert before they move on.
Finding that balance between breadth and depth, okay? So those are the methods. But looking at on-the-job training overall, what are the big advantages? Why is it so popular?
Well, according to Table 20.1 in our source, the massive advantage is that output is still being produced. The trainee is learning, yes, but they're also contributing, doing actual work.
Yeah.
Very efficient use of time. Plus, it's extremely relevant to the job. What they learn is directly applicable, right there, right then. No theory gap.
And cost. It feels cheaper.
Generally, yes. It's often cheaper than other forms. You're typically not paying for external trainers, venues, travel, using existing resources. And it can be easy to organize.
Yeah.
Relatively quick to set up within the normal workflow.
Okay, sounds pretty good. Relevant, cost-effective, keeps work flowing. But what are the catches? The disadvantages?
Well, the flip side of producing output while learning is that output may be lost or mistakes made. Trainees will make errors. That can mean wasted materials, lower quality, maybe even damaged equipment. That's a cost. It can also be pretty stressful for the worker. Learning under pressure, knowing mistakes are visible or costly, that's tough.
Yeah, I can imagine. And what about the person doing the training, the experienced worker?
That can be tricky too. Staff might get frustrated if they feel like unpaid trainers. It's extra work, potentially slowing them down, maybe without any recognition or extra pay, can cause resentment. And a really crucial one, it could be a danger to others or equipment. Think about high-risk jobs, surgeon, train driver, heavy machinery operator. Learning purely on the job might be too dangerous. Mistakes could have severe consequences.
That's a huge point. Safety, you can't compromise on that. Which leads us neatly to the third category, off-the-job training. Learning away from the workplace.
Exactly. Off-the-job training means training away from the normal work area. So attending courses at colleges, specialist training centers, workshops run by external providers. The key is being removed from the day-to-day job pressures.
So a dedicated learning environment, what kinds of things does this involve? Lectures? Workshops?
Yeah, all of those. Could be lectures, practical workshops, maybe using simulators, we'll come back to that, or formal courses leading to qualifications. The main thing is the focus is 100% on learning, not on immediate production targets.
Okay, let's look at the advantages. Using Table 20.2, what makes this worthwhile even if it might cost more?
A major one, linking back to what we just said, is that output isn't affected by mistakes. Learning happens safely away from the live environment. No risk to production or customers. Also, learning isn't distracted by work. Trainees can fully focus, absorb the information without phones ringing or urgent tasks popping up. Better concentration, potentially better learning.
That dedicated focus sounds really valuable, especially for complex stuff.
It is. Plus, training can sometimes happen outside work hours, offering some scheduling flexibility, although that's not always popular with employees. Crucially, customers and others are not put at risk, essential for those high-stakes roles. And you often get access to specialists, expert trainers with deep knowledge who might not be available in-house, brings in fresh perspectives.
Right, so it's safe, focused, brings in experts, sounds good, but the downsides, it must be expensive, for one.
That's usually the biggest hurdle. No output is produced while the employee is training. That's lost productivity, a direct cost. And yes, some off-the-job training is expensive.
Yeah.
Course fees, specialist trainer costs, travel, maybe accommodation. It can add up very quickly.
So you're paying for the course and losing the employee's work output. Double whammy.
Pretty much. Another thing is that some aspects of work just can't be taught off the job. The real-world pressures, specific company quirks, dealing with unpredictable situations, sometimes you just have to learn that by doing it live. Simulation helps, but it's not always the same. And finally, it can take time to organize. Booking courses, arranging travel, coordinating schedules. It might not be as quick to implement as on-the-job training.
Let's bring this to life with the Emirates example again. That 7 weeks of training for cabin crew sounds like a classic case of necessary off-the-job training.
It's a perfect illustration. 7 weeks before they even start flying. It's a mix of theory and practical. And the source highlights the realism. Practical training in machines that simulate the movement of all aircraft types.
Wow, full cabin simulators. You can see why that's vital for an airline.
Absolutely. They practice everything from customer service to emergency procedures in a safe, controlled, but highly realistic environment.
Given the high stakes, passenger safety, security, the airline's reputation, this kind of thorough, off-the-job preparation is non-negotiable. It's a massive investment, but essential for them to operate safely and maintain their standards.
It makes total sense. You need that foundation before you deal with real passengers at 30,000 feet. Okay, so we've got induction, on the job, off the job. Now, let's pull back a bit. Looking at training overall, from the business's perspective, what are the big picture benefits and limitations?
Right, the broad strategic view. The main reason fundamentally is keeping workers effective, giving them the skills and knowledge they need. But it's also about adapting to change. Training keeps employees up to date with new technology, new safety rules, changes after a merger, new ways of working, new laws, all that stuff.
So it keeps the workforce current and agile. Exactly. Which ties into improving labor flexibility. If you train people in multiple skills, multi-skilling, the business becomes much more flexible. You can move people around to cover absences, handle busy periods, shift resources. It builds resilience.
Yeah, having people who can wear different hats is incredibly valuable.
Definitely. Then there's the impact on job satisfaction and motivation. We touched on this, but well-trained workers feel more secure, less anxious, more competent. That leads to less frustration, higher morale, feeling valued, which makes them more motivated and less likely to leave.
It's that virtuous cycle again. Investment leads to competence, leads to satisfaction, leads to retention.
Precisely. And it supports growth. Training is needed when the business expands, brings in new products or tech, creates new jobs, and it's absolutely crucial for promotion. You need to train people for the new skills and responsibilities of a higher role, developing internal talent.
Okay, so the benefits are clear. Adaptability, flexibility, morale, retention, growth, promotion. Seems essential. But it's not always smooth sailing. What are the big limitations or downsides for the business?
Well, the first and often biggest is cost. Training can be really expensive. Course fees, trainer costs, materials, maybe simulation tech. And don't forget the opportunity cost the employee's time spent training is time not spent producing work. That's a very real cost.
Right, the direct cost, plus the lost productivity cost.
Exactly. Then there's the point about learning by doing. Some managers just fundamentally believe that real-world experience beats classroom learning or simulation every time. They worry that skills learned off-site won't transfer properly under real pressure.
The gap between theory and messy reality.
Kind of, yeah. And we've mentioned loss of output. Off the job means zero output from that person. On the job means reduced output or mistakes while learning. Either way, productivity takes a hit during training. And perhaps the most frustrating limitation, employees leaving.
Ah, yes, the big risk. You train them up, and they take those new skills elsewhere.
Precisely. The business makes a big investment, and then a competitor potentially gets the benefit without paying the training bill. It's a significant risk you have to weigh up.
That's a really tough balancing act for businesses. Invest and risk losing them, or don't invest and risk falling behind.
It's a constant strategic challenge. The benefits are huge, but the costs and risks are real.
Okay, that's been a really thorough exploration. Lots to think about. Now, to help everyone lock this in, let's do a quick quiz. Just 4 quick questions to check our understanding. Ready?
Let's do it. Quick knowledge check.
Question 1. Which of the following is a benefit of on-the-job training? A. Training can take place outside of work hours. B. Simulations can be used. C. It is cheaper than most other types of training. D, trainees will not be distracted by the work itself.
Okay, think about on the job. Happens at work. So A, B, and D sound more like off-the-job benefits, flexibility, simulation, focus.
Yeah.
The one that fits on the job best from that list is C. It's generally cheaper because you're using internal resources.
Got it. Question 2. Which of the following is an example of on-the-job training? A, mentoring. B, simulation. C, correspondence course. D, job analysis.
All right, again, where does it happen? Simulation, correspondence courses, those are off the job. Job analysis isn't training, it's defining the role. So A, mentoring is a classic example of on-the-job training, learning from an experienced colleague while working.
Makes sense. Question 3. Which of the following is a benefit of training? A, it's cheap. B, workers always enjoy training. C, worker skills can be updated. D, business cash flow improves.
Let's see. A, definitely not always cheap. B, workers don't always enjoy it. Sometimes it's stressful. D, improved cash flow is a potential outcome, not a direct benefit of the training itself. So C is the core benefit. Workers' skills can be updated. That's the fundamental purpose.
Perfect. Last one. Question 4. An induction course may be used in which situation? A, train workers in new skills. B, possible workers with a new qualification. C, deal with an employee grievance. D, introduce works to company policies and regulations.
Induction is for new employees, right? Getting them started. So A is ongoing training. B sounds like recruitment. C is conflict resolution. D, introduce works to company policies and regulations. That's exactly what induction is for. Setting the scene, explaining the rules.
Excellent. Hope that quick quiz helps solidify things for everyone listening.
And that really brings us towards the end of this deep dive on training. We've looked at why it's so important, unpacked the main types, induction, on the job, off the job, and weighed up the pros and cons for businesses.
Yeah, it's really clear that training isn't just, an optional extra. It's a strategic investment, a crucial one. It comes with costs and challenges for sure, but it's absolutely vital for developing a company's most important asset, its people. Understanding all this is key for IGCSE students, obviously, but really for anyone interested in how businesses actually work and succeed.
Definitely. And as you go forward, maybe reflect on your own experiences. When have you been trained? When have you seen training happen? How do the ideas we talked about, induction, learning by doing, maybe specialist courses apply to the places you work, or even just businesses you interact with? You'll start seeing it everywhere.
And maybe one final thought to leave you with. Something to chew on. We know training has benefits, but also costs and risks, like employees leaving. So how do you think businesses actually decide if they're launching, say, a brand new technology or creating a totally new job role? How do they figure out if on the job or off the job, or maybe a mix, is the best investment, especially if money's tight? What factors would they weigh up?
That's a great question. The real-world trade-offs.
Yeah.
Something to ponder. And just one last time, if you want more resources, detailed explanations, carry on your deep dive. Check out www.igcec-business.weebly.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into training. We really enjoyed unpacking it with you. We'll catch you on the next one.